The room fell into an unnatural, freezing silence the moment she uttered those words. We were gathered around my mother's dining room table to celebrate her retirement after 30 years of teaching. It was supposed to be a night of warmth, memories, and shared laughter, but instead, the atmosphere shattered like cheap glass. Julian is always going to be a priority in my life, Clara said, her voice airy and casual, as if she were merely announcing her preference for a specific brand of coffee. She took a slow, deliberate sip of her white wine, her eyes scanning the room with a confident, almost defiant smile. My father's fork remained frozen halfway to his plate. My mother's smile vanished, her eyes darting instantly to me, searching my face for a reaction. My sister looked down at her lap, suddenly very interested in the embroidery of her napkin. I didn't yell, I didn't break my glass or slam my hands on the table. Instead, I stared at the sweat dripping down my water glass, watching a single droplet trace a path to the wood below. In that precise second, the confusion that had clouded my mind for the past year evaporated. The fog was gone. I knew exactly what I had to do, and I knew that this dinner and our 4-year marriage was ending tonight. To understand how we arrived at that frozen moment, you have to understand the life we had built. Clara and I had been together for 7 years, married for 4. On paper, we were the picture of stability. We had a beautiful craftsman house with a wraparound porch, a joint savings account destined for a down payment on a cabin, and a routine so comfortable it felt unbreakable. Sunday mornings were for the farmer's market, Tuesday nights were for trying new recipes, Fridays were for catching up on our favorite shows. I worked as a landscape architect, a job that taught me to appreciate patience, growth, and the necessity of strong foundations. I believed that if you watered a relationship, gave it sunlight, and tended to the weeds, it would survive any season. Clara worked in corporate brand design, a fast paced environment filled with deadlines, networking events, and constant digital connection. I admired her ambition, her sharp mind, and her creativity. But about a year ago, the soil began to sour. The shift was subtle at first, almost imperceptible. It started with her phone. A device that used to sit carelessly on the coffee table was suddenly face down, never more than an arm's reach away. She would take it to the bathroom, keep it close while cooking, and angle it away whenever a message popped up. Then came Julian. He was Clara's college boyfriend, an aspiring artist who had recently moved back to the city after a disastrous divorce and a failed business venture. When Clara first mentioned him, she framed it as an act of pure mercy. "He's in a really dark place, Arthur," she had told me one evening while we were making dinner. "He has no support system here. I just want to be a friend and help him get back on his feet." I wanted to be the mature, secure partner. I didn't want to play the role of the jealous, controlling husband who dictates who his wife can and cannot see. So I nodded, smiled, and told her I trusted her completely. I even invited Julian over for dinner once. He was charming, polite, and overly inquisitive about my work schedule and how often I traveled for regional landscape projects. After he left, Clara laughed and said he was just trying to make a good impression. But soon, Julian's shadow began to stretch over our entire lives. Clara started taking long walks after dinner, claiming the evening air helped her process her design projects. I would sit in our living room, watching the minutes tick by, knowing her phone was glowing in the dark as she walked around our neighborhood. When we had disagreements about our future or finances, she didn't stay to resolve them. She withdrew to the backyard with her phone. The turning point happened on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Clara had told me she was heading to a local gallery opening to support one of Julian's friends. I had stayed home to finish a design layout on our shared desktop computer in the home office. As I sat there, her messaging application, which was synced to the computer, started flashing. I tried to ignore it, telling myself to respect her privacy. But then a message popped up that made my stomach drop. It was from Julian, and it read, "The way you looked at me today made it hard to go back to my empty apartment. Thank you for the escape." My hands began to shake as I stared at the screen. I felt a cold dread wash over me. I clicked on the chat history, and months of their conversations unspooled before my eyes. It wasn't physical pornography. It was far worse. It was a catalog of emotional betrayal. She had shared her deepest fears, her frustrations with my busy season at work, and details of our private lives that belonged only to us. She was giving him the best, most vulnerable parts of herself, leaving me with the exhausted, distracted leftovers. I saw messages where they met for long weekday lunches at a boutique hotel restaurant downtown. Lunches she had told me were client meetings. I took my phone out, carefully photographed the screen, logged out of her account, and sat in the dark for 2 hours, listening to the rain beat against the window. When she came home that night, she was bright, bubbly, and full of stories about the gallery. I looked at her, searching her face for any sign of guilt, but there was nothing. Her performance was flawless. A few days later, I tried to address the issue without revealing what I knew. I asked her gently if she felt we were losing our connection, if there was someone else occupying her mind. She laughed, a sharp, defensive sound, and told me I was being paranoid and insecure. "You're overthinking everything, Arthur. It's exhausting," she said, turning her back to me to wash her hands. That word, insecure, stung like a physical blow. It was designed to silence me, to make me doubt my own sanity. I realized then that she was using my trust as a weapon against me. She was banking on my desire to keep the peace, confident that I would rather swallow my doubts than cause a scene. But she had miscalculated. I decided right then that I would no longer protect her secrets. I would wait for the right moment, and when it came, I would speak the truth without hesitation. That brings us back to my parents' dining room. I had spent the days leading up to the dinner in a state of quiet, hyper-focused calm. I helped my mother plan the menu, bought her favorite vintage of wine, and even helped Clara select the emerald green dress she wore. Clara spent the car ride to my parents' house, texting furiously, her face illuminated by the harsh blue light of her screen. When I asked who she was messaging, she gave a vague answer about a design emergency at work. I didn't push. I didn't argue. I saved my energy for the theater she was about to build. When we arrived, she was the perfect daughter-in-law. She hugged my mother, congratulated my father on his recent golf tournament, and poured wine with a practiced grace. I watched her play the part, marveling at how easily she could wear a mask of devotion while her heart was anchored elsewhere. Then, dessert was served. My mother was talking about her retirement plans, mentioning how much she looked forward to gardening and traveling. My sister turned to Clara and asked if we were planning any summer getaways. That was when Clara leaned back, swirled her wine, and delivered the line that froze the room. "Julian and I are actually looking at a weekend cabin rental in the mountains. He really needs a change of scenery, and he always says, I'm the only one who truly understands his creative block." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's glass touched the table with a sharp click. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill my lungs. "Clara," I said, my voice cutting through the quiet like a knife through paper. "Why are you planning weekend trips with another man?" She laughed nervously, trying to play it off. "Oh, Arthur, don't be so old-fashioned. Julian is a major part of my life. He supports me emotionally in ways that are hard to explain, and I'm not going to cut him out just because of your insecurities. I smiled slightly, a cold, empty smile. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, unlocked it, and slid it across the mahogany table until it tapped against her wine glass. On the screen was the photograph of her messages from the shared computer. Read them, I said quietly. Read the messages from last Tuesday. Read the part where you told him you wish you had married an artist instead of a landscape architect who only cares about dirt and plants. Clara's face drained of color. She stared at the screen, her lips parting in a silent gasp. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice suddenly stripped of its confident, airy tone. "It's the truth," I replied, my voice steady, measured, and completely devoid of anger. My father leaned forward, his brow furrowed as he looked from the phone to Clara. My mother put a hand over her mouth. Clara tried to push the phone away, her fingers trembling. "This is private. You invaded my privacy. This is completely out of context." I shook my head. There is no context that makes secret hotel lunches and late-night declarations of love respectful to our marriage, Clara. You didn't keep Julian around as a friend. You kept him as emotional insurance. He was your backup plan, your ego boost, the person you ran to whenever you didn't want to do the hard work of maintaining our relationship. Nobody at the table spoke. Even the grandfather clock in the hallway seemed to quiet its ticking. Clara looked around the room, searching for an ally, but she found only cold, disappointed stares. My mother spoke softly, her voice heavy with sorrow. "Clara, that is not how a marriage works." Clara scraped her chair back, her eyes welling with tears of frustration and embarrassment. "I can't believe you are doing this to me. You are humiliating me in front of your family." I stood up, smoothing the front of my shirt. "I didn't humiliate you, Clara. You did that to yourself." I'm just finally stopping the lie. We left the dinner in absolute silence. The drive home was a suffocating vacuum. Clara cried, accusing me of blindsiding her, of destroying her reputation, of being cold and calculating. I didn't argue. I drove with my hands at 10 and 2, focusing on the yellow lines on the road. When we got home, she packed a suitcase and left for her sister's apartment. The house felt incredibly quiet after the front door clicked shut. I sat on our sofa in the dark, but for the first time in a year, my chest didn't feel tight. The heavy, suffocating weight of suspicion was gone, replaced by a clean, sharp grief. The next morning, I called a divorce lawyer. Filing the paperwork felt unreal, like stepping through a thick fog. But my mind was entirely clear. Over the next 3 months, we divided our lives. We split the savings, canceled our joint accounts, and put the Craftsman house on the market. Some of our mutual friends tried to play peacemakers, telling me that emotional affairs are gray areas, that I was being too harsh, too rigid. I didn't care. I chose silence over debate. I established a new routine. I woke up at 5:30, went to the gym, spent my days designing beautiful, structured gardens, and cooked simple, quiet meals for myself in my new apartment. I learned to love the silence. It was no longer filled with the phantom typing of messages or the weight of unasked questions. When the divorce papers were finalized, we met one last time at a quiet coffee shop to sign the remaining titles. Clara looked tired, the spark in her eyes replaced by a dull exhaustion. She pushed her hair back and asked, "Do you hate me?" I looked at her, and to my surprise, I felt nothing but a mild, distant pity. "No, Clara," I said, I don't hate you. I just don't trust you. And without trust, there's nothing left to fight for." She nodded slowly, realizing that her words could no longer manipulate me. We walked out of the coffee shop and turned in opposite directions without looking back. Love doesn't die in loud, explosive arguments. It dies in the quiet betrayals, the hidden screens, and the divided loyalties. Walking away didn't mean I lost. It meant I finally chose myself. Sometimes, the strongest move isn't yelling or begging. It's naming what's happening, setting down the burden, and walking away. That night, one sentence ended a marriage. But it also gave me my self respect back. And that's the part no one tells you. Losing the wrong person can finally make room for the right life.